So it's my privilege to introduce today's speaker for this particular session, which is Dr. Ashutosh Kumar Dubey. He's currently an assistant professor in the Department of Ceramic Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Bhubaneswar, Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, India. He's also a visiting faculty at Nagoya Institute of Technology, Nagoya, Japan. His research interests include piezoelectric biomaterials, piezoelectrically toughened materials, functionally graded materials, nanoporous bioceramics, and analytical computation. His research outcomes have been published in over 55 prestigious journals of international repute, including Biomaterials. He also has authored a book published by Taylor and Francis Group. As recognition for his research work, he received various prestigious national and international awards and fellowships, such as the Young Scientist Award by Indian Science Congress Association in the year 2011 to 12, as well as by Indian Ceramic Society in the year 2015, Japan Society for the Promotion of Sciences, JSPS Fellowship for Foreign Researchers 2012 to 14, and Ramanujan Fellowship by Department of Science and Technology, DST, Government of India, for the year 2015 to 20, Mahe MAHE Award in the year 2018 by Society for Biomaterials and Artificial Organs, India. He is servicing as editorial board member of EC Orthopedics and associate editor of American Ceramic Society Journal, by name International Journal of Applied Ceramic Technology, published by Wiley Publishers. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and being here to deliver a talk on functionally graded materials. Thank you, sir. This virtual stage is yours. You can start your session right now.
Thank you very much, your kind introduction. First of all, I'm very happy to see these many, big number of participants, because I think it is, if I say it is the sum of last 3-4 FTPs that I attended virtually, it is the sum of all these, as per the number is concerned. Because in any FDP, I have not seen, I mean, registered number of participants are more, but when it comes to, attending the talk, I mean 20, 25, 30, like that. So thank you very much. And today I have been given this title, Functionally Graded Materials, by the organizers. So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I am Ashutosh Kumar Dubey from Department of Ceramic Engineering, IIT BHU, Varanasi. So to begin with, oh, slide is not moving. I hope the slide has moved for all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will start with the Kashi Darshan. As you know, Varanasi is the, city that is, city older than the history, right? See, we have the city Varanasi, and it is kind of a spiritual capital of our country. You can see in the middle of the slide, you can see this, very famous Sarnath place, which belongs to the Buddhist religion. So almost this is the center of all the religions that our country follow. So with this, the topic that today I have been given, functionally graded material. If you want to see, I mean, for your later reference, so this is the book that I wrote, Interdisciplinary Engineering Sciences, Concepts and Applications to Material Science. So most of the fundamentals you can find in this book. So just to begin with, I am unable to see. Okay. So just to begin with, what are functionally graded materials? Our technology is continuously advancing. And in this, modern technological era, it is very difficult to get the performance of a monolithic or single class of material to satisfy our real life challenges, right? So there is a special class of material that is called as functionally graded material, which is, supposed to, or which is with application of which we are achieving many of the even tedious performances by using some engineering, by doing some engineering in few of the selected material compositions. So there is actually, as the name suggests, there are some functional gradation, and those type of materials, they are called as, characterized as special class of, you can say, the composite materials. So functionally graded materials, there is a gradual variation in composition. There can be gradual variation in phase. There can be gradual variation in structure. There can be gradual variation in microstructure. So you can have the gradual variation in number of systems, number of compositions. For example, if you see the slide, bottom left, we need a material where one side of it is hard and another side of it is tough. So hardness and toughness, they are diametrically opposite, but we need some application where for that particular class of material, we require such kind of application. So in that case, as you know, any of the monolithic material cannot satisfy this criteria. So what we will do, we will definitely go for functionally graded material. So functionally graded material, they can be designed in a number of ways. There are many ways. Just a simple way is listed here. If you see at the left-hand side of the figure. So here, let's say one composition is X, another one is Y. So what you can do, you can increase the, one of the compositions just by weight percent, volume percent, or whatever it is. Or you can take the different, I just kept the slash because there are a number of options. So you can have variation in these compositions as well. You can choose the number of different compositions, as you can see in image number 2. There, the compositions are different at each and every layer, entirely different. So you can have variation in selected compositions. You can have different type of compositions, right? Layer by layer, you can have different type of composition. But all these are serving our purpose to provide the functional gradation in performance, in properties. Okay, so that's the thing is that, so there is a gradual variation or gradient in performance or properties from one end to another, or from depending upon the application, right? Many times what happens, we need the properties, we need the gradual change in properties from substrate to surface, right? Because on surface, we don't want to, there are few applications. For example, this is the application which I am going to cover today there, because this is very wide topic, functionally graded material. So I am going to cover just only one today, that is for biomedical implant, because functionally graded material, you can use it for biomedical implant, aerospace applications, sensors, automobile application, optoelectronic devices, bioelectronic devices for energy application, structural application, number of mechanical applications. So this is actually very wide, scope and very wide title. So just to narrow down, or just for today's lecture, I selected the only, I focused only on the biomedical implants. And that too, why? Because the functionally graded materials, I just wanted to cover today that natural functionally graded material, which is existing in the nature. So one of the natural existing functionally graded material I'll just cover today, along with one such application, which is you can see on the right hand side of the slide. Now, one of the things that I want to stress upon here is, if you see, there are layer by layer arrangements, right? Be it compositional variation, be it different composition, but there is. Is there any issue? Is there any issue? Am I audible?
Nothing, sir. You can continue,
okay,
sir.
Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, if there is a problem in voice, I can switch off my camera, then it will be better, right? Sometimes because camera is on, sometimes it can create. That is okay, right? All right?
It's okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You can carry on.
Thank you. So you can think of how we are synthesizing. Once you can think of the situation, once we are going to develop these type of materials, we have one layer, we have another layer, different layer. And if you are just varying the composition of second phase, for example, the case one, you can see in the bracket X plus 10% Y, X plus 30% Y, 50% Y, and so on. So here you can expect not much variation in the properties, right? But if you are taking the different composition, for example, in the second case, one is hydroxyapatite, another one is sodium potassium niobate, right? So your material your chemistry material are entirely different. So especially what I am going to take here is particularly ceramic materials today. So you can think of the ceramics, they are processed at very high temperature, right? Very high temperature, more than 1000 degrees. So what will happen if we have different kind of layers during cooling or during heating? If the layers, because they are different type of compositions, so if one of the layer has different, let's say any thermoelectric properties, let's say coefficient of thermal expansion is different, right? So what will happen? Definitely they will delaminate, right, during cooling, because they have different coefficient of thermal expansions. So there are number of issues which needs to be addressed, because there are number of interfaces, right? Number of interfaces. At interfaces, there are different class of materials are there. So definitely the properties will be different. So heating and cooling, during heating and cooling, they will respond differently. So what we need special kind of some processing if you want to have a good functionally graded material, right? Good functionally graded material means functionally graded material with a good performance. So just I am now moving to the next slide, that is human bone. Why I took this topic for today, because this is the naturally occurring functionally graded material. This is obtained in nature. We have bones, right? So our bone is a classical example of functionally graded material, right? Yeah, but if we define as materials, it is nothing but a polymer ceramic composite, right? In fact, natural bone is supposed to be, not supposed to be, it is the classical example of functionally graded material and nanocomposite material, which is a polymer ceramic natural composite. And it has, there are two phases. As ceramic phase, we have apatite, and as organic phase, we have collagen. That is a protein. So these two are ceramic and polymer phases are there. So if you see in the middle of the slide, this is how the bone look like. So outer part, as we know, the outer part is hard and dense, right? So this is called cortical bone. As you move inside, the porosity increases. Despite of the similar composition of ceramic and polymer, or apatite and your collagen, the porosity increases. This provides the functional gradation to the bone because, inside it is highly porous structure. You can see at trabecular bone, it is around 50 to 90% porosity is there. 90%, and this porosity is required, right, to regulate the metabolic activities of the bone, because we need to supply their, all the bloods and nutrition for its growth and all. So this is a different issue. But overall, if we talk in terms of the material system, human natural bone or our natural bone is a graded gradient material, right? So at the bottom, just for the sake of completeness, I mentioned the composition of the bone, which is quite obvious or quite known. So majority of which is ceramic in bone, that is apatite, and among the apatites, the majority is of hydroxyapatite. There are a number of other deficient apatites are there, but majority of it is calcium phosphate, that is hydroxyapatite. And second one we have, that is collagen. That collagen is organic phase. Collagen is nothing but a type of protein molecule, and rest is cell components and water. So we are not going that much into detail. So now we are going to see, I'm going to spend some time on this slide. Now we are going to see that what this functional gradation does actually with the bone. So we can realize that what is the importance of the functional gradation in our bone. So first of all, I would like...
डंप बॉक्स में डालते हैं, डंप बॉक्स के ऊपर पर इसको क्लैंप कर देते हैं।
Is there any issue? No? Okay. So natural bone is a dynamic tissue. Dynamic tissue means the bone that we have in our childhood age, it is not there now. It has been replaced. So our hard bone, that is cortical bone outside of the bone, this replaces after every 10 years. And the cancellous bone, that our porous bone, which is there inside, this replaces after every 3 to 4 years. Obviously, that depends upon one's metabolic conditions, but it replaces after a certain period of time. So hard bone after every 10 years and porous bone after every 3 to 4 years. So it replaces. That's why the bone is called as a dynamic tissue. How this dynamic activity comes in bone. And before that, just I would like to show you this one demonstration. You can see at the left-hand side of this slide. This is actually human femur bone of a around 48 years old man. He was died in an accident, and this experiment was performed after 3 or 4 days of his death. Okay, the experiment was very simple, very simple. How it was performed, this on the femur bone, mechanical stress was applied, and it was cyclic stress. Okay, cyclic loading conditions. It was undergone cyclic loading conditions. So some pressure of 50 pounds was applied cyclically, and is this silver epoxies on silver 1 inch by 1 inch silver was taken with help of epoxy, and at 600 places they were sticked. And what was the response of each of these was monitored by oscilloscope. So if it is not clear in these, but here, if you see in the middle of the slide, these numbers are very clear. These numbers are, we are applying with the help of oscilloscope. They have measured how much amount of charge actually is generating as the result of this stress application, this dynamic stress application, right? Cyclic stress application. So the charge was measured in terms of picocoulomb per square inch. So you can see these numbers. These numbers are nothing but the charge measured in picocoulomb square per inch. Now you can see the nature and amount of charge both are very different in the very next segment, right? Very different in very next segment. So the first thing they concluded from this study is that this is, of course, this is not our concern, but what this was the conclusion that bone is a piezoelectric material, right? Because we are applying the pressure and the electricity or charge is being generated. So that means the bone is a piezoelectric entity, right? Bone is piezoelectric material. So what our concern here is, if you see one number, if you see on the very next segment, the number is changing dramatically, right? And many times you can see not only the amount of charge, but the nature of charge is also changing, right? At few places you can see minus 112. In the very next vicinity you can see 60, right? Plus 60. So minus is changed to plus, and that too is such a big number on the very next segment. So this confirms that, I mean, with help of this result, you can realize that to what a small extent the functional gradation is there in our bone. Because if you may recall, we had studied long back, the first piezoelectricity was discovered in quartz, right? So what will happen if you apply the compressive stress, the different amount of charge will generate. If you apply the tensile stress, different amount of charge will generate, right? So you may recall that if you apply the compressive stress, what will happen? The positive charge generates, right? If you apply the tensile stress in the quartz, negative charge generates, right? Compressive stress will give rise to the generation of negative charge, and tensile stress, positive charge. This we have studied, right, long back. I mean, when the quartz was discovered as a piezoelectric material for the first time. So here you can see that we are applying the similar amount of pressure, right? For example, we are applying the compressive stress, or we are applying the tensile stress, because this is cyclic loading, right? So at a moment, either compressive stress is applied, right, or tensile stress is applied, but we are getting both the nature of charges, right? We are getting negative charges, we are getting positive charges, right? That means, and what we are doing, we are applying at a moment either compressive or tensile stress, right? But what we are getting the generation of both type of charges. That means one segment under the application of, let's say, compressive strength, even for the compressive strength, one segment of bone is undergoing compression and the very next segment is undergoing tension, right? So this is only possible because of this functional gradation in the natural bone, right? And in fact, if we can design such type of material, so we can have very, very, very advanced technological application in many fields, including biomedical. Not only in biomedical, if we can design the functionally graded material to this level, right? Because you can see this is ultra structure is changing. That means the ultra structure is changing, because on the very next segment we are seeing the different effect, right? So it has a lot of mechanical consequences as well, right? So that means if we are running, or if you are pressing our leg, that does not mean that entire leg is undergoing compression situation, right? So some segment of, because of this functional gradation, because of this change in ultrastructure, one component of bone, some components of bone are undergone compression and some are under tension, right? So this is the way how the functionally or natural functionally graded materials work. So we can have, if we can manipulate while we are designing the functionally graded material, this will be a kind of a booming applications. Okay, So what will happen? Actually, what it does for the bone, this is not our concern as far as the engineering is concerned, uh, but just to just for the sake of completeness, I'm telling you that what the piezoelectricity does. So far we have seen that the natural bone is piezoelectric material, and this functional gradation provides this piezoelectricity. So what it does, this piezoelectricity helps in many things. This piezoelectricity helps in bone growth, in its maintenance, in the fracture healing, right? Because actually what happens during our daily life activities, bone undergoes complex type of loading condition, right? You can see from this figure that definitely it is complex type of loading conditions, because one segment is negative, another one is positive. So the complex type of loading condition means compression is there, tension is there at the same time under the similar action, right? So what happens, the reason where the negative charge generates, there the osteoblastic activity takes place. Osteoblastic activity means the bone deposit to that place. Means that place where the negative charges are there, they are favorable for the bone growth. And the charges where the reason where the positive charges are generated, the bone resolves from that place. The bone will go away from that place, right? So in this way, what the piezoelectricity does, piezoelectricity helps in maintaining the structure. You have never seen that if our hand is growing from childhood, it is not possible that one segment is going forward, right? So the structure is completely maintained. So piezoelectricity helps in maintaining the structure in this way as well. And it helps in fracture healing, it helps in bone growth, right? The unfortunate component is that if you can see right hand side of the slide, that the bone piezoelectricity is the function of age, right? Function of age. After a particular age, 40 years of age, this coefficient decreases. So, and you might have noticed that if the bone fractures in a younger person, it will take a shorter time to heal than that of an older person, right? Why? Because the piezoelectric coefficient, piezoelectricity play an important role in fracture healing, and it is the function of age, and this coefficient decreases in an older person than a younger person, right? So this is the unfortunate component. But anyway, our objective is to focus on the functionally graded material. So I'm now moving to the next slide. So this is just to give you the little bit insight of the bone. We had discussed that it is the composite, primarily it is the composite of hydroxyapatite, that is ceramic component, and collagen, that is polymeric component. So you can see in the left hand side of the slide, this is the tropocollagen molecule, right? So how they are forming the composite, or which type of structure provide the functional gradation to the bone. So these tropocollagen forms the collagen fibril type of structure, and this hydroxyapatite is embedded in these type of structures in the form of nanoplates. So in the bone, the hydroxyapatite present in the form of nanoplates. So that's why I told that this is the classical example of a nanocomposite material. That's nanocomposite. This kind of concept of nano came right, I think that 30-40 years back, right? But our bone is it's long existing. Nature has a long existing example of forever existing example of nanocomposite material, right? So in this way, it forms osteon. In this way, it forms osteon, which is called this basic building block of natural bone. So, okay. So now we will start that. If you recall, we said that it is very difficult to develop the functionally graded material, because what we are doing, we are not only varying the content of one phase. I just moved to few black slides just to maintain the continuity. You can see that we are not only varying the composition, we are in fact changing the composition. So it is very difficult if you have the, sintered material, final product. It is very difficult to retain all the phases or all the layers integrated, because one has different thermal properties, one has different electrical properties, right? So different properties are there. And during, as I said, especially I'm covering here the ceramic materials, even if the metallic material, if you take the, so what will happen, each and every layer has different thermoelectric variation, or coefficient of thermal expansion can be different. If the coefficient of thermal expansion is different during cooling, one will shrink more, one will shrink less. What will happen? There will be a delamination between their layers occurs, right? So just there are a number of ways to process the functionally graded material. So today I am just covering one of the ways, and one of the very challenging, or very exciting way to process these materials. We will see its principle, how it works. So I am now going to move to the slide, which is entitled as spark plasma sintering. Okay, so this is kind of a unique facility to process, to develop the functionally graded materials of any type of material, right? Any type of material, be it metal, be it polymer, be it ceramic. So because I started with the ceramic, so I am now focusing only on the ceramic materials, right? So to narrow down this talk. So if you can see the left hand side of the slide, you might be able to see, I'm not sure if you have sintered any class of material, but many of you, is involved in developing the material. So here actually we use dye, even for any type of conventional sintering we use dyes, right? Here the dye we use is made of graphite, because here we need conducting dye. And in this particular technique, we use pulsed DC voltage, and pulse current is passed through the powders, right? So this is entirely different from the conventional techniques. So, I'm not going to, cover this conventional processing, but we can have some comparison at any moment in between. So the red portion that you are seeing is basically our powder of any material, right? Or very different color class of material. So what we are going to see particularly here is how it works, its principle. So it is very easy. After that, it will be very easy to realize that, how we can develop a very good functionally graded material using this particular instrument. Just we will see the principle in a moment. So if you have a powder compact, the red one is powder compact, and a pulse DC current is applied, right? And this operation is done under the simultaneous application of temperature and pressure. So pressure is continuously there. Our powder compact is here. And one more thing is that this operation, because we are using graphite dyes, so this operation has to done in vacuum, right? Otherwise, at high temperature, your dyes will be affected, right? This graphite dye, so they can convert into carbon dioxide, right? So that is different story. But even if you evacuate the chamber, so it is possible that few of the air is trapped inside the powder particles, right? Powder particles, some of the air is trapped, and we know the air is a dielectric material, right? Air is a dielectric material. So I have just for the sake of completeness of this fundamental, I kept one slide different at different place what is a dielectric material, how it works. But for this time being, I am just using this terminology, dielectric material. So air is a dielectric material, and every dielectric material has a breakdown strength, right? Every dielectric material has a breakdown strength. What is dielectric material? Dielectric, right, for example, if you apply the current in any conducting material, copper, it conducts, right? But if you apply any ceramic material, alumina, it won't, right? In any brick, it won't, right? But for example, alumina and all the insulators, they are typically dielectric materials where you apply the electric field, they will not conduct the current. But what will happen? Because there is, they are basically the ionic solids, right? So there is relative displacement between the positively and negatively charged ions. So they form dipole, right? So that if you apply the more amount of electric field, the displacement will increase, but it cannot go for a, infinite distance, right? So there is a particular displacement at which the physical deterioration of that particular dielectric material occurs. So it means physically it will break. So you might have seen many times if you pass through any big transformer region, right, power station region, you might have heard the sound. So because of this dielectric breakdown of those ceramic seals. So if you apply the electric field, enough high electric field, the breakdown of that dielectric material will occur. So anyway, that is different story. Coming to this point, if the air is trapped between the powder particles, what will happen? We are applying the pulse DC current, right? And we are applying the voltage along with the application of pressure. So what will happen if you keep on increasing the application strength of this field at particular value of electric field which exceeds the dielectric strength of air, right? Dielectric strength of air. What will happen? The dielectric breakdown of air will take place, and dielectric breakdown of air leads to the generation of plasma. What is plasma? Is nothing but the ionized gas, right? That we know. So that's why the terminology plasma is there. Sintering, what is sintering? So this is the plasma. Sintering is basically the high temperature treatment, right? Which is usually provide to give the strength to the green body, right? And this is high temperature phenomenon where it occurs via the diffusional mass transport in any body, right? So this generation of plasma helps in this diffusion process, right? So that's why this is categorized as a very, very, very advanced technique, processing technique. Why the term spark is there? Because we are applying the pulse tissue. We are applying the pulses for microsecond duration. And once the plasma generates, I was telling what is spark. Spark means, as you know, this is momentary electrical discharge, right? Spark, what is spark is nothing but the momentary electrical discharge. Why it happens? Because we are applying the pulse tissue. We are applying it for microsecond duration and few microsecond duration, then it was off, then on for few microsecond off. So it generates spark. But what will happen if plasma generates? So plasma, once the plasma generates, the local temperature that increases several thousand degrees centigrade. Now you can think of everything will just go off, right? Everything will just melt. No, because it will not happen, because we are applying this field for a moment, right? Just spark generates. So, but this spark means there is a momentary generation of plasma. Momentary generation of plasma is there. That's why the technique name is spark plasma. So that means spark of plasma generates. Spark of plasma generates. So this plasma generates for a very short duration. But even that, for a very short duration, it generates between the powder particles, right? Where the gap is there. Gap is there means that definitely the air will be there and breakdown of air has occurred. And between the powder particles already the pressure is there, right? Pressure is applied there between the powder particles that your plasma generates, where the temperature several thousand degrees centigrade exceeds, but momentarily, next moment it is gone. But that one that temperature is sufficient to melt at least the particle surfaces. Okay, and the particle surfaces, once the particle surfaces are melted, you are having the application of pressure from both the sides. So what will happen? Surface melt, the particle will bind to each other, right? The particle to particle connection is very good. Now you can cool. So once the particle to particle connection is very good, you can think of the problem of, because now the particles are connected internally, right? Not by any of the external means as happen in case of the conventional processing techniques, right? So you can have different layers. You can have very good integration of different layers by certain, certain limited amount of, you can say, engineering, right? So what will happen? This is very, very, very effective technique to produce functionally graded materials. And as I said, this technique uses the pulse DC pulse current or voltage, right? So one pulse came, then gone. Next pulse came, gone. Next pulse came, gone. So this will lead to uniform sintering throughout your compact, which is almost not impossible for any of the conventional sintering technique. You might have noticed if you are working on any such kind of processing. So here, because repeated on of DC pulses, so you can have spark discharge point or Joule heating point, they can transfer throughout the specimen. So you can get 100% compaction in your solid, 100% density, 100% density. Okay, because there is no gap. So 100% density, and alumina or any ceramic material, they are opaque, right? Why from how the opacity comes from? This is the light, reflection from your pores, right? From your pores are defects, right? So if you engineer your powder compact that you can have you make it defect free, so you can generate the transparent ceramic materials using this technique. And in fact, nowadays, this potential has been realized that if you can have 100% compact and there is no defect, so you can have even the transparent ceramics. And if we have this transparent ceramics, it has number of applications in space, right? So this is the mechanism of spark plasma sintering. So first stage is the initial stage, that is the generation of or you can say that this is just spark discharge generation or on-off pulse energization, right? So the second stage, you can see the generation of a spark of plasma. Spark of plasma. I'm not saying the plasma generates. I'm always mentioning the spark of plasma generates. Okay, so this is the big difference, because once the plasma generates, the temperature immediately suited to several thousand degrees centigrade. So everything will just go, but it generates momentarily. So, but it is sufficient to melt the particle surfaces. And once the particle surfaces are melted, you can see at the third stage, right-hand side of the slide, top right, vaporization and melting action of on particle surfaces occurs. Vaporization and melting action, right? That means your surfaces are very, very, very active. Now, a fourth stage, you can see generation of spark impact pressure. Why it is called spark impact pressure? Because pressure is always applied, right? Pressure is always there. Now the particle surfaces are there like this. Pressure is always there. Once the spark of plasma generates, the particle surfaces melts, pressure is there, what will happen? Immediately they will come in contact. That's why this pressure at that time is called spark impact pressure, right? And what will happen? All these, melted resin, sorry, all these melted parts, what will happen? The sputtering will occur, they will sputter to this region or that region, right? So they will go to the regions where the gap between the particles is there. So this leads 100% densification to your powder compact, which is not possible, which is almost impossible by any of the conventional techniques. So with this application, you can realize its potentiality for the development of functionally graded material. Okay, so I'm now moving to the next slide. So just for the sake of completeness, I'm summarizing those effects, those mechanisms stepwise. That means what are the phenomena that occur here, what are its effect, and what is the practical advantage. So the first phenomenon that we have seen is the generation of a spark of plasma, right? Generation of a spark of plasma. What it lead to? It lead to the evaporation, melting, and purification of the particle surfaces. Okay. Second stage, we have seen the generation of spark impact pressure. Spark impact pressure, as I said just now, the particle surfaces are already compacted, right? And they are melted. Pressure is there. Melted means nothing is there. Now the viscous part, what will happen? Immediately the particle to particle compact will be there. So this lead to the local stress because the melted part was there, and it leads sputtering. Sputtering means now that melted material will go to the region where the space is there, right? So this is called sputtering. Third action is generation of Joule heat. Joule heat will always be there, right? Because you might be knowing this I square R term, right? We are supplying I, so resistance is there, I square R term will always be there, right? Most important phenomenon here is the action of electric field. What it does, wherever the gap is, because electric field we are applying, one polarity is there at the bottom, one polarity is there at the upright, opposite polarity. So whatever the charge it generates, they will try to move towards opposite polarity region, but they can move only where there is space. So they will fill, in this practice, what they will do, they will fill the entire space. So this way they provide the 100% densification. Okay, so what are the effects? Effects, surface activation, right? Your surfaces are very fast active, which is very, very, very important when you sinter any material. High speed diffusion, high speed material transfer, efficient heating, and plastic deformation promotion, right? Because plastic means whatever the melted mass is there, that helps in this reason. And what is the practical advantage? You can have low temperature sintering, right? Because now if you understand, if you see the mechanism, so with this mechanism, for example, if any conventional sintering technique, let's say you are using the 1200 degrees centigrade to sinter it, here you can sinter it at 200-300 degrees centigrade, lower than that of any of the conventional sintering technique. And there in conventional sintering, you might have noticed sometimes we need hours or days to sinter a material, right? Not only the hours, sometimes we need days to sinter a material, and that hours or days for any of the conventional sintering, conventional processing technique. In this technique, you can sinter in minutes, few minutes, right? So days or hours are converted to minutes. And with this technique, you can sinter even very hard to sinter materials. Okay, so in this way, now you can immediately realize that we can bond even dissimilar materials, right? Any dissimilar materials. And nowadays this has lots of practical advantage, because for many application we need a good bonding between dissimilar kind of materials, including functionally graded materials. So overall, with this technique, we can develop a very good kind of functionally graded material, which provide not only a good integration between the layers, but also the rapid sintering, shorter sintering temperature, uniform sintering, right? Full density compaction, we can get 100% dense sample. And because we are not giving this power or voltage continuously, we are giving it for a moment, right? For some microsecond, and then microsecond, then microsecond, few microsecond duration. So that because of this application of this pulsed current or pulsed voltage, we are at the site of low power consumption, right? So there are a number of advantages. The main advantage is that we are getting the material with very good integration between their layers. So this is one of the best processing techniques to develop the functionally graded material so far. So just I have now moved to the next slide, that is called wonders of spark plasma sintering. So the first point that you can see is that those who are now doing or involved in the sintering processes, they might be knowing that sintering, we have any of the conventional sintering process, we have densifying mechanisms, we have non-densifying mechanisms. They both are active, right? At lower temperature, let's say, for example, if our sintering temperature is 1000 degrees centigrade, for any material, any ceramic material, or for any metallic material for 400, 500. So at the middle of this respective sintering temperatures, what will happen? At the middle of these temperatures, we have few mechanisms due to this thermal effect, few mechanisms, they are active. For example, the material transport from the surface, vapor phase transport, they are also active, and they provide, overall, they provide non-densification, right? They actually, they do not help in the densification. So that's why in any of the conventional techniques, you will end up with 90%, maximum 92, 93, 94, 95% densification, because of the activation of these non-densifying mechanisms at lower temperature. But here in spark plasma sintering, in conventional sintering, what is our heating rate? You can heat your material at 5 degrees centigrade per minute, 10 degrees centigrade per minute, 15 degrees centigrade per minute, right? Here in spark plasma sintering, you can have 100 degrees centigrade per minute, 200 degree, 300 degree, 500, 600 degrees centigrade. Nowadays, even 1000 degrees centigrade per minute. So you can go very fast to your sintering temperature. You can reach within a minute, right? In a minute to your sintering temperature, 1000 degrees centigrade in a minute. So in this way, you can actually skip this non-densifying mechanisms, and you can reach directly to the region where the densification takes place. So in this way, you can have the 100% dense compact. And this is very advantageous as far as the development of functionally graded material is concerned, because we have number of interfaces, right? We have the number of interfaces. So in this way, it is very advantageous. Second thing is that the grain size, I mean, as we all know, that the grain size decides many of the properties of the material, including mechanical, right? Right? There is a direct relationship between the grain size and the strength of a material, right? So, I mean, not only the mechanical, electrical, electronic, many of the properties are associated with this grain size. And here, with this technique, we can engineer the grain size, just by decreasing or increasing the heating rate, because we have a range of heating rates, right? We can heat the material at 50 degrees centigrade per minute. We can heat the material at 1000 degrees centigrade per minute. So we have a big range of, heating the material, right? 50 degrees centigrade per minute to 1000 degrees centigrade per minute. So with this big range, you can engineer your grain size depending upon the application where your material is going to be used, right? So not only the size, you can engineer the, the grain boundaries as well, thickness of the grain boundaries as well, right? So there are, and this, it has actually, electronics, if you see in electronics, it has a lot of application. Just by engineering the grain size, you can have, I mean, nowadays, PN junction and many other electronic applications are there. And third one is 100% consolidation of even difficult to sinter materials, right? Now we can realize that, oh, because of this mechanism, though there are number of materials, because the materials which has melting temperature, let's say 2700, few ceramic materials are there, 2700, 2800 degrees. They are very difficult to sinter by any of the conventional sintering technique. But here, by this mechanism, we can have not only sinter these materials, but even with 100% consolidation, 100% density. Okay. And the fourth point, this is very, 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 very unique for this technique. As we have seen in case of bone, the functional gradation came just because of the porosity, right? And if you see, if we go to develop some kind of porous material, I mean, if you try to attempt to develop some kind of functionally graded porous material where the outer region is hard, outer region is dense, and once you go in, porosity increasing. So in this way, what we will end up with? We will end up with poor. So porosity and strength, they are two diametrically opposite effects. Right? But am I audible?
Yes. You're audible, sir.
Oh, thank you.
You can continue.
Okay, thank you. But if you see, if we attempt to develop the porous material, that means it is well known, right? We are going to sacrifice the strength. So porosity and strength, they are diametrically opposite effect. But if you attempt to process it using the spark plasma sintering technique, what you will end up with, a very good reasonable strength even in porous materials, because of the mechanism, right? Because of the mechanism. So you can develop even the functionally graded porous material with a good reasonable strength as far as the porous material strength of porous materials are concerned. Okay, because even if porosity is there, but whatever is connected, the particle to particle connection is there, right? Particle to particle good connection is there. So you can get a reasonable strength even in highly porous materials. So, I mean, this can be considered as wonders of this particular processing technique. And there are number of other important aspects, because that it will take a long time. So for piezoelectric materials, nano domains can be, this is purely the electrical or electronic application of this particular technique. So this is not our point of concern, but what will happen in any of the conventional processing technique, you can, if you want to increase its, let's say piezoelectric coefficient, so you need to develop the nano-sized grains, right? And by any of the conventional technique, it is very difficult to achieve the nano-sized grains because of the the mechanism, and because of the significant ground growth, because we need high temperature, long enough time, sintering time, holding time, right? So it is very difficult to attain the nano-sized grains. even with the, if you start with nano-sized particles, but here if you can engineer the grain size, as I mentioned in the second step, right? You can start with the nano-sized particle, you will end up with the nano-sized grains. So, but here, and this, what I was telling at this point was nano domains. Nano domains in conventional sintering, you can get only with the nano-sized grains. But if you spark plasma sinter, the material, you can have the nano domains even in micron-sized grains. So how it happens, this is, you know, again a long story that we will not see it now. And the next point, if you see lower holding duration, means you are not allowing the grains to grow. So you can reduce the grain size. And you know, if you have sub-micron nano-sized grains, we can have number of other applications, or you can improve the properties in our systems, right? Including mechanical. So, and one of the problem, once you are going, this is the second last point in the slide. For example, if we are going to have number of layers in our functionally graded materials, right? It is quite possible that in any of the conventional technique, there is reaction between these two layers, right? It is highly possible, highly probable. But here, because everything happens in few minutes, right? Our sintering, there, conventional processing technique, we need hours or sometimes days. Here we end up with within few minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, they are enough to sinter the material. So you can restrict the unwanted reaction between those layers, even if they are highly reactive. Right? Even if they are highly reactive, you can avoid those restrictions because you are not allowing enough time to react them properly. Okay, so last point, as I said, is transparent ceramic, right? Because 100% densification, and if you choose the powder particles carefully, you can end up with transparent ceramic materials. Ceramics are mainly opaque, right? And bonding of dissimilar materials. Dissimilar materials bonding we have seen, or we can now realize that how this bond, they can bond the dissimilar materials. So we can have a very good or very integrated functionally graded material by this technique, by this processing technique. Okay, now I'm moving to the one practical example. What is this? This is an attempt to develop to get the bone-like properties in a material, to get the bone-like properties in a material. If you can see the title, this is the enhanced polarizability of hydroxyapatite. As you know, the hydroxyapatite is the mineral component of our natural bone, right? Using the design concept of functionally graded material. So what in this study, what has been attempted? In this study, it has been attempted that we want to have the chemistry similar to the apatite, but rest of the electrical properties are like that of the bone. So if you are going to develop composite material, let's say, right? Composite means you are going to add something in hydroxyapatite. If you are going to add something in hydroxyapatite, the surface chemistry is sacrificed, right? Definitely the surface chemistry will be changed, right? Because let's say if you are adding hydroxyapatite, zirconia, alumina, whatever, any metallic material, right? So, but they will be on the surface as well. So that means you are going to sacrifice the surface chemistry, but you don't want to sacrifice the surface chemistry because it is the mineral component of the bone. And once you implant this material in the body as bone substitute, the body will not recognize it as a foreign material, right? So this is only possible by the development of functionally graded material, and the next challenge is how to process it, right? The next challenge, because what has been selected here, hydroxyapatite as such is kind of insulating material. And as we have seen, the bone is a piezoelectric material, right? And this piezoelectricity has number of consequences, right? We have seen few. So in this way, bone is hydroxyapatite is not electrically active, electrically inactive, and we want to have electrical activity in our material, but at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice the surface chemistry. This is only possible with the help of functionally graded material. So here, what has been done? This NKN, if you see in middle of the slide, the NKN is written. This NKN refers to the sodium potassium niobate. This sodium potassium niobate is actually the best known piezoelectric biocompatible material so far. Okay, this is the best known piezoelectric biocompatible material so far. So a layer of sodium potassium niobate has been introduced between the hydroxyapatite layers. But at the same time, if you see, the coefficient of thermal expansion are very different for sodium potassium niobate and for hydroxyapatite. So with any of the processing technique, what we have seen that the even with the spark plasma sintering, we have seen the delamination between these two layers occur, right? Or the strength was not good. So just to address this issue, we have tried number of ways, and you can see in between the hydroxyapatite and NKN, there is one more layer has been introduced. This layer is the just one optimized ratio of hydroxyapatite to sodium potassium niobate, just to avoid the mismatch of thermal properties, because this is they has to process, it has high temperature, right? And their coefficient of thermal expansion are different. So this just to compensate such a mismatch in their thermal expansion coefficients, a buffer layer has been introduced. This buffer layer is optimized layer, means by different compositions it has been tried, and at the one particular composition which is mentioned here, it has been observed that the layers are very good integrated. So if you see at the right hand side of this slide, the first one, the first SEM image, scanning electron microscopy image, is taken from the interface between hydroxyapatite and buffer layer. Right, the top one here is hydroxyapatite, and the middle one you can observe, but the import is buffer layer. You can see there is no clear or distinct interface even at microscopic level, right? It is very difficult to observe any interface, right? They are very good integrated. And the second SEM image, if you see, this is between the buffer layer and sodium potassium niobate layer. Again, you can see microscopic level also, you cannot see any signature of any kind of delamination, right? So, and they are sintered using spark plasma, properly designed spark plasma sintered techniques. Okay, so in this way, we have not seen any type of delamination or any signature of adverse effect of their different coefficient of thermal expansion. So that's why it is being claimed that this spark plasma sintering is one of the best ways to obtain the functionally graded materials. Not only this, hydroxyapatite as such is an insulating material, is not electrically active at all. Bone is an electrically active tissue. So you can see left hand side, because of time issue, I'm not going to explain all these, but they are actually summarizing a lot of electrical activities in hydroxyapatite. So you can see at the left bottom that it has a very good, it has got very good piezoelectric coefficient, ferroelectric hysteresis loop, coercive field. You can see the remnant polarization, they are almost comparable to that of the bone, which is not supposed to be obtained in pure hydroxyapatite material. Right, so without any sacrifice in the surface chemistry, you can get electrically active hydroxyapatite. You can increase the polarizability of hydroxyapatite, and this polarization has very important consequence in biomedical field, right? I mean, time is less, I think. So you can see this left hand side is for this is the hysteresis loop, piezoelectric hysteresis loop for this developed functionally graded material, and right hand side is just for the cortical bone sample. This cortical bone sample means hard bone sample, because we have two different types, as we saw, the cortical and cancellous. So cortical one is very easy to measure, right, because they are very hard bones. So you can see this is very comparable to that of the bone sample. So you can develop the electrically active hydroxyapatite. So this is one of the aspect that I said in the beginning, that one of the aspect is to develop the functionally graded materials for biomedical applications. The same way to generate the functional gradation, what here it is more close to that of what is actually happens in the bone. In the bone, what we have the collagen, we have hydroxyapatite, collagen, hydroxyapatite, collagen. I mean, this the hydroxyapatite as such is not piezoelectric, so piezoelectricity in the bone comes from collagen. Here, the sodium potassium niobate has been arranged in a way that at one place it is polarized, at the next segment it is unpolarized, next segment polarized. So in this way, it provides the functional gradation in the composite to mimic that of the bone properties, right? So these are the very what you can say, very advanced way to develop the functional gradation in the material, and to improve the performance of or properties of existing materials for any particular application. Because I'm just covering one application. Initially I said you can have number of applications. So this is again taking the another class of materials using hydroxyapatite as the base material. Again, here you will see at the top and bottom hydroxyapatite phases are there. In the middle one, in the left one, the barium titanate has been introduced as intermediary layer. In the right one, calcium titanate has been introduced as intermediary layer between two HA layers. But again, the red strips you can see, they are the buffer layers, just to compensate the thermal mismatch between the barium titanate and hydroxyapatite, or between the hydroxyapatite and calcium titanate layers. So just to compensate these two thermal mismatch, buffer layer means they are optimized layer of these two materials only. They are not different layers. They are made up of either hydroxyapatite and barium titanate in the left case, or hydroxyapatite and calcium titanate in the right case. And at the bottom, you can see the SEM images. Now you can see how they are well integrated. You can see the dotted line interface has been shown. You cannot see at the interface, you cannot see any of the sign of delamination or crack formation or anything, right? So these layers are integrated very nicely, and this is going to reflect when in your properties or in the performance of these materials. Right, so and this has number of applications, not only in biomedical field, but here actually what I chose just biomedical application. Now this more now I'm coming towards, after processing, I'm coming towards the application aspect, more towards the application aspect. So here we can actually enhance the sulfate processes. because after developing such kind of materials, we need some good type of applications, that too advantageous over the currently existing materials. So in this way, actually, what we attempted to provide the electrical stimulation when we cultured these materials with the cells. So we have provided some external stimulation so that cell growth and proliferation increased. And in this way, we can, if you integrate or if you implant that material in the body, that can integrate in a faster way if you can enhance the cell growth and proliferation. So these are, I'm not going that much into detail, but these are the ways that we attempted to increase the cell material interaction process to minimize the integration time of that implant with the host bone tissue. So this is one of the ways, because as I said, we can increase the polarization of hydroxyapatite. So this polarization, with this help of this polarization, we can develop the charge on the material surface. And as I said in the beginning, that how the bone growth occurs, right? If the regions where the negative charges are there, the osteoblastic activity means bone will deposit to that place. And wherever the positive charge generates, the bone will, dissolves from that place. So this is the way the bone maintains structure during our daily life activities, right? So in this way, actually, we can develop using the similar concept, we can develop the charges on the material surface, and using the advantage of these charges and how the cell respond towards the polarity of these charges, we can increase the cell material interaction process, right? So again, I'm not going that much into detail. This is just to show you that because we are applying some voltage and current to the cell media, right? Cell culture. So there is a concern that this energy density can cause temperature change or temperature rise. But so this is at bottom of these slides, we have calculated the energy density, temperature change of the media, and how much current is flowing when you apply the electric field. So they are very nominal values. Temperature change, if you can see, 10⁻⁻5 Kelvin, so almost nil. Energy density, you can see 10⁻⁻5 joule per centimeter cube. So what I want to convey is they are very nominal. So this phenomenon is overall very effective. So we try to explain the mechanism, which is not useful at this moment. And this is just to show that once you have cold composites, cold functionally graded materials, so there we can take the advantage of increasing the cell growth and proliferation and minimizing the integration time with the host bone tissue. Okay, and this one more aspect that I just want to show is, nowadays what people are facing in these type of implants, I mean the implants that people are using, is the prosthetic infection. Many times it has been observed that if the infection occurs just after the surgery, this doctors can see, and it is easily treatable. Let's suppose if the infection in the material occurs after a year of implantation, after a year of fracture, after a year of implantation, it is very difficult, right? And this can cause very severe consequences. And nowadays, this prosthetic infection in these implants has become, one of the driving areas as far as the research is concerned. Here, because what we observed is, if you develop the charge on your material surfaces, and because the functionally graded material, they are already, hydroxyapatite is already, polarizable, so you can very easily develop charges on those material surfaces. And we have attempted on number of composite systems. What is the important message from this or from few coming slides is that if you develop the charge on the material surface, they have the ability to kill the bacteria. So in this way, you can avoid the infection in the implants even after a few years of implantation. So this is what is the message here, and all the slides. And this is just to show you that because we have attempted number of different type of systems, which is not exactly the hydroxyapatite. So this is just to show that whether they are compatible or not. So we have performed some animal studies, right? So few in animal models, we have seen that they are not affecting, and histopathological analysis of these few organs like heart, spleen, kidney, lung, liver, they have been performed, and we have observed that these particles, if any nanoparticle form, they have not affected to any of these major organs. So this is actually the few of the fundamentals that I wanted to cover for the today's talk, but I think it is better if we go for discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful talk about functionally graded materials. And you also gave an insight about what actually functionally graded materials are and how they are made. And also you talked about a unique sintering method, which is spark plasma sintering, and other aspects. So we thank you, sir, on behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering,
thank you
MSRAT.
So much.
I thank you for sharing your knowledge with the participants. And now I request the participants to ask questions. And I can see 5 questions which are already been posted in the chat box.
Yeah, please.
I request Dubey sir to please check on them and answer them one by one. The first question is...
Where is that?
Chat, sir. In your screen, you can see at the top. It's okay, sir. I will read it for you.
Yeah, please, because I'm unable to open
it. The first question is, sir, what will be the maximum thickness of the sample that can be fabricated?
Maximum thickness of the layer or entire sample?
Of the sample.
Maximum thickness of the entire sample.
Entire sample.
Yeah, okay.
Of the entire sample using SPS.
Okay. Actually, it depends upon your because nowadays we do not have, actually as of now, we do not have any SPS which can produce these kind of materials at industrial scale. So as of now, yes, obviously there is limitation of this thickness, so that you can go up to, let's say, 5, 6, 7 mm, not more than that, because they have, most of the SPS nowadays has been designed only for the research purposes. Very, very few are there in the are producing the you can say the industry scale materials, and they are limited to Japan only. Outside Japan, I have not seen in any country that this industrial scale production using SPS is there. So yes, of course, we have limitation of 6 to 7 mm. At max.
One more question related with this is, how would be the bonding strength between one layer to the other if it is going to be a metal ceramic reinforced sample? Because there will be mismatch in the thermal stresses that is induced to a material because of the heat, and there would be some bonding difficulty, and residual stresses gets built up, no?
So so that actually I tried using hydroxyapatite and titanium. So what we attempted, yes, initially we faced a lot of problems. A lot of practical difficulties, even we performed using a very high level of vacuum from very beginning. titanium will oxidize, right? If there is mishandling even so we processed everything in the vacuum. We handled the powder in the vacuum before placing it into the SPS machine. But the thing is that between hydroxyapatite, not if I do not specify these cases, between your metal and ceramic, you need actually few layers to compensate those mismatches. So whatever the mismatch is there, as you say, thermal expansion or other properties, so you need to introduce few layers to compensate those mismatches. Actually, for one case we did, so we have done lot of engineering. Between two layers, actually, we introduced 3 different layers to address the 3 different issues. So it is possible, but it requires a lot of engineering. So you need to introduce the number of layers with varying the content and amount, and it has to be optimized. But yes, it is possible. It is possible to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Still, actually, I'm not able to see that chat box. So, if you can ask directly, or could you read that?
Yes, so the next question is from Jivananda T. Does the material degrade during spark plasma generation? Is this technique applicable to ceramic polymer composite samples?
Very good concern, but answer is yes. You can process as composite using the polymeric materials. Initially, it was the issue. Yes, actually, many of the SPS companies, they, initial days, it was very important concern that metal was okay. As far as the composite is concerned, metal was okay. Polymer was okay. So polymer and metal was okay, ceramic was okay. So making the composite of ceramic and metal, it was okay. But earlier it was the concern that if you add one of the phase, polymeric material as one of the phases, but nowadays you can use the polymeric material as the secondary phases. In that case, you cannot heat your material at a very fast heating rate, and you cannot keep the temperature very high. So primary concern during that processing will be the melting temperature, or will be the processing temperature of your polymeric material will dominate, and you have to feed the data, sintering cycle according to the polymeric material. Then you can very easily process. So it will not degrade the polymeric.
Okay, sir. The next question is from Ziauddin Sheikh. What are the specific applications, name of the parts or products of aluminum-based alloy developed by the spark plasma sintering?
Aluminum-based alloy. Actually, I'm not getting the question properly.
Yeah, I will repeat again. What are the specific applications of aluminum-based alloy developed by the spark plasma sintering?
Actually, as of now, I have not come across any particular aluminum-based alloy composite which is being, applied. But a lot of, as far as the research is concerned, a lot of, research papers are there on these materials. But as far as my knowledge is concerned, I have not seen any industrial applications so far, because this is the technique that is coming up, emerging technique. It has potential, but as of now, many of the alloys or many of the material systems, they are limited to the research on. For dental applications, recently, one company in Japan, they have started using the hydroxyapatite. They are matching some different material based on that, but that was not aluminum, that was alumina and hydroxyapatite in functionally graded material for dental applications.
Okay, sir. The next question is from Raj Shekhar. Does interfaces count will affect strength of materials? I mean the layer of
number of layers.
Number of layers.
Number of layers, I have not seen the number of layers will affect the properties of the material, but if the interfacial strength, you have to tailor it with a good engineering way, because the interfacial strength with the number of layers, the interfacial strength can be sacrificed.
Okay, so the next question is, does the SPS technique, is it applicable for fabrication of aluminum-based composite with waste material?
Yeah, that is possible. That is possible.
Okay. So what is the cost of such kind of setup, sir?
I mean, you mean instruments?
Yes, sir.
Equipment, actually, it is kind of 1 crore. Okay, 1 crore. But nowadays, because the number of companies are involved, so it is, instead of increasing, the cost is now reducing. So those who are working in metallic materials, they can get this, because metallic materials, we need 400, 500, right? 600 degrees centigrade. So the metallic materials, only for the metallic materials, if you have to sinter, you can get this machine at around 60, 70 lakhs. But metallic or polymeric materials. But if our application is high temperature ceramics and all, and if you want to see, because a special concern is with the ceramic materials, so that will go 1 crores. I means 1+ crores.
Okay, so the next question, can we fabricate aluminum silicon carbide as FGM?
Aluminium?
Silicon carbide as FGM, functionally graded material.
You have to work on interfaces at the initially. If you can do the exercise for the interfaces, you can do it.
Okay, sir. Next is, can we design a heat sink with FGM?
Heat sink? Actually, this is
because
beyond...
of its different quotient of thermal expansion. Can we design a heat sink by using FGMs?
Maybe, but I have not come across such a concern, because this is somewhat different from the area of my expertise. Okay, so sir, maybe we can do it, but I have not come across.
Okay, sir.
Sir, may I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please.
Sir, since in this SPS technique, you said that practically we are now able to achieve the 100% density, and there will be no pores or anything, any defects will be there. But I suppose we are making this materials in the form of ingots, or even if we try to make this dies of shape of the medical implants, still some certain amount of machining must be required. So whatever the composite or whatever the material we are getting with this novel technique, will it be, this machining will be easier, or it will become more difficult, or how is so?
Machining means after getting the product, right? After getting the sintered product.
Yeah. So after getting sent means I'm supposing that we are making this sintered products in the form of ingots, because exact dies of the medical implants, making this exact replicas of medical implants may not be possible. So after making these ingots, we may require some machining to make them exactly of the shape we want. So this machining will be easier or it will become difficult? Is there any study done on that side?
They are actually doing machining, but for example, if I say if I mention about one example, I was visiting one of the SPS company. There we have total hip joint replacement material, right? So I have seen this femoral ball. We have there, right, in the hip joint we have a ball.
Yes.
So that is typically I mean, if somebody is getting implanted, so that one is made up of typically German alumina or zirconia. So what they did, because they are very brittle materials, right? As far as the machining is concerned. But
yes,
I have seen a very smooth ball. They have made a very smooth ball, very smooth and very shining ball. So I asked them how they do that. They said that just one ball took a week. So I mean, very soft kind of machining they did. So machining is possible. Actually, you can increase the strength of the material by SPS. So if it gets sufficient strength, the machining by soft machining tools are possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other participant who would like to ask any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please, Dhananjay.
Sir, when you discuss about first slide about the pressure on the bone and you find the electric field and electrically difference based on the different region. So my question is that, is there did any study by putting pressure at one place and study at other place? Means finding the electric field at other places of the bone.
Putting the pressure at one place and
putting the stress or pressure at one place and finding the electric field at other places instead of taking one piece and finding the electric field at the bone. Take one point A, giving a stress, and point B, finding the electric field. Did any type of study there?
You mean without taking the bone sample out, right?
Yes.
There are very limited and very scarce and in fact very confusing studies. But there are few studies in Texas Medical College. They did some study on live kind of bone conditions. Actually, what they did, though, they in an attempt to treat a bone fracture patient. Initially, they try to measure whether they try to see without doing X-ray. They try to see whether the bone is growing or not. So they try to measure by putting electrode from outside. They try to measure the impedance of that region, but that was not very successful. And then what they try to do, they try to as I said in one of the slides, if you apply the electric field, it can increase the cell material interaction process. That means your fractured bone will be healed faster. So what they did in the same patient, they put the stainless steel electrode on the fractured region of the bone, and they started applying the external electric field from outside. They observed that the fractured region has healed faster, but faster means than the normal rate of recovery. But at the same time, the stainless steel that they used, again, that was integrated with the bone. So this is the bone, this is the rod. That rod was also integrated with the bone. That plate, stainless steel plate. So they did another surgery to take out that steel, and that took longer to heal. So the overall healing time was even much longer than the normal healing. So after all these exercises, people were actually, as of now, people are not very much into this practice. But this is obviously a challenge to do it. And it will be a kind of interesting information if it is available.
Yes, sir. Next is when you discuss about the changing the electric field even at one stress. So can you fix the stress to make a control electric field without any changing positive or negative?
It was fixed. It was in that experiment, it was fixed. The silver, small silver, as electrode, quarter-inch by quarter-inch silver was fixed with the help of epoxy into that region. And using double oscilloscope, the charge was measured.
So my question is that I am asking that I did told that in the slide that when you're putting a stress, one is 60 plus, next is minus 112. But my question is that I want to make 60 positive all over the board. So can you generalize the pressure there that you can get a particular voltage without any changing the positive or negative? Can you do this?
I mean, on the real bone sample?
Yes.
Difficult. Because that ultrastructure is very difficult, very different, because they are so, I mean, that's why I said that this is the very good natural and classical example of functionally graded material. So they are arranged in such a way, this is very difficult.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions by participants? Yes. Sir, so I guess there are no questions from participants, but I have two questions from my part. I just wanted to ask you about the spark plasma sintering facility. Is it currently available in IIT BHU?
Actually, IIT BHU, I got funding of 1 crore, but
okay.
The instrument I took was high enough configuration, but 1 crore was not enough for that. That was 1.5 crores. So as of now, I do not have that facility here. It is there in IIT Kanpur.
Okay.
ISC Bangalore, I think it is not there, but IIT Hyderabad, it is there, but IIT Hyderabad one is lower configuration, very low configuration.
Okay, sir. And my next question is, you talked about the plasmas, spark plasma sintering technique. I just wanted to know what are the different production techniques which are used in FGM apart from SPS. Apart from SPS.
Yeah. One of the successful techniques that after SPS comes is tape casting. Tape casting.
Okay,
I mean, they usually prepare the tapes of one type of material, very thin tape, then another tape, then another tape, then another tape. So all the tapes, they just press it. Means after drying all the tapes, they just press the tapes and they just sinter. But there are actually issues with those tapes, and few of the reports I have seen using conventional sintering technique using this one. What to say, cold isostatic pressure, CIP. Yeah, CIP. Yeah. But not, I mean, not very exciting results. I have not seen any exciting results. So this tape casting is somewhat okay. Tape casting is okay.
Okay, sir. My next question is, can additive manufacturing be used to fabricate FGMs?
Actually, in the production of SGM, the challenging part is the interface.
Yes, sir.
So interface, yeah, I think the additive manufacturing interfacial phenomenon are that much, I mean, are still concerned as far as I know.
Okay.
So it
so
can
mean
be
to say there is no good bonding in the interface.
Interfacial actually, because the interfaces has to be very good.
Okay, sir. Okay. So I guess there are no other questions. We'll wind up this session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, once again for delivering a talk on functionally graded materials.